1800. They would fly like at 1800. And
Barney, and I am so pleased to be with you, ladies and gentlemen. I am a resident of Savage, Maryland. My home still stands on Savage Guilford Road. It was built in 1760. A residence that must be considered, I think, for some of its historical significance. I myself was in the United States Navy during the Revolutionary War. Of course, we didn't have much of a Navy in the Revolutionary War. We went on to the War of 1812 and still did not have one. I must modestly say I received some distinction during that war by developing a flotilla to attack the British. We would sneak out of rivers and tributaries, attack the British, and then sneak back in, where they could not get to us. We were successful for a while, but unfortunately, then we were dissolved. I joined the land forces and fought in the Battle of Bladensburg, where I received this wound upon my thigh, which to this point the surgeons have not been able to remove. At that time, if you check the papers, I retired to my home, which was in Savage, that time called Elk Ridge Landing, for convalescence and recuperation. I'm very interested in the town and in the area because a great deal of historical significance has happened there. My daughter Caroline married Nathaniel Williams, one of the two famous Williams brothers, who established the duck mill there in Savage back in 1816. They convinced Mr. Savage to invest upon it and into it, and it has provided duck work and other materials to our country from about the mid-19th century through the 20th century. Also on that very same property was a forge in which lathes and gears were made that were shipped around the world, including Harper's Ferry, in which John Brown's famous raid took place. It is a highly significant historical area. And my plea here to you this evening, my fellow residents, many of you savages, who I would say as you work on this, please do give due consideration in our plans as we develop the area, sensitive to its historic significance. If you'll be so kind as to forgive me, the pain in my leg is causing me some agony, and I shall retire to my home to rest. It has been a pleasure to meet you. If some of you should like to talk more to me about this, there are people here who know me and know how to reach me. Named Myra Phelps is one, and there are several others. If you should like to talk some more, I'll be happy to talk to you about Savage and its history. In addition, there's a gentleman who maintains a residence there, even though he travels a lot, very distinguished gentleman named Chuck Dick. Good-looking gentleman. If you get a chance to talk with him, do be kind to him, I beg you, because he is in a most precarious profession. He is an actor. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time.
And I'm pleased to be able to solicit your feedback tonight through our consultant team, and I'd like to introduce them as well. What we're going to do, well, let me give you a little bit of background. So, every 5 years, the County Recreation and Parks Department produces a comprehensive plan. It's called the Land Preservation, Recreation, and Park Plan. And that plan is required by the state of Maryland in order for our department to be eligible for funding from Program Open Space. And Program Open Space, I'm not sure if everyone's aware of it, was founded in 1969, John, I think, when it was legislated by the state, and 0.5% of real estate transactions go into this fund to provide money to local jurisdictions for land acquisition and park development. It also funds rural legacy and agricultural preservation programs as well. So it's a wonderful program. It's a model for the nation, and we certainly take it seriously, and we want to stay in the good graces of the state. So we're going to be updating our plan now through this process. So tonight we're asking you to give us some feedback. The consultants are going to walk you through the exercises. We're going to have some interactive exchange, and hopefully we'll get some good solid information as we proceed through the plan. So I'd like to introduce some folks. The Sasaki team is Brianna Sinclair. She's our project manager for the project. Gina Ford is here, and then with Inspired Green, who's doing a lot of the marketing and artwork that you're going to see tonight, is Shansei Lundy, Fabiana Paez, and Robin Jackson. And then our staff here tonight is John Marshall is the Chief of Parks, Matt Madeira is the Director of the Center. You probably all know Matt. Ashley is his assistant back there, and Seth Hoffman is our marketing and public information guy. He does a lot of photographing, and he's going to be hopping around between here and Roger Carter taking pictures. So we really look forward to your feedback. It's not a public hearing. It's we're just here to hear what you want over the next 5 to 10 years in the county. What kind of services, what kind of parks, programs, where you might want those located, and we already have a pretty good idea that people want a pool here. So I think that's a foregone conclusion. And pickleball. So very well choreographed campaign on pickleball. Anyway, enjoy the night. I'm here if you have any questions for me or the staff, so I'll turn it over to Gina.
Thank you so much, John.
Thanks.
Okay, so we're not going to talk all that much. We really want to hear from you. So Rhiannon and I are going to do a quick overview of some of our analysis to date in the process so you understand where we're moving. So this is our second public event. What we're going to cover tonight, we're going to talk about this LPP-RP, which John already sort of previewed. What is the state requirements and how do we think about that plan? What's the department's mission and vision? As we think about this plan, we need to align it with your needs, but also with the department's mission and where they see themselves moving. We're going to show you the timeline. We're going to talk a little bit about what we've heard already from the community in our previous engagements. And then we're going to talk about 3 themes that we really think start to pull together some of what we're starting to hear and could be a framework for the future. Grow, preserve, and play. We'll end a little bit on vision and then set you loose to do some engaged conversations with all of our team. By the way, are all wearing red. Rhiannon has the official t-shirt. Mine's too small, so I'm wearing this. So find us afterwards. We'll be at different stations helping you through. So I think John covered a little bit of this already, but what is the LPP-RP besides being a mouthful? It's the Land Preservation, Parks, and Recreation Plan. It's an important resource for the county to evaluate and see how well it's doing, how well it's keeping up with key issues and trends, and thinking about how to enhance the system and really meet community needs. We're looking really for clear goals and strategies and priorities to come out of this process to give the department really a roadmap to the future. But most importantly, and why we're here tonight, is it's important that it really aligns with your feedback and your needs and the needs of the community. So any feedback we can get tonight is incredibly valuable. The LPP-RP has 3 major components: parks and recreation, natural resource conservation, and agricultural land preservation. For the purposes of this plan, we're really focusing quite a bit on parks and recreation. And you can see kind of all of the different ideas, but clearly the plan seeks to be holistic in the way it thinks about the open space and natural systems and recreational facilities. So when we think about the department, which is an incredibly well-run and well-respected department, I think you'll see that in some of the feedback we've heard already, really delivering kind of exceptional service. This is their mission statement, and clearly the priorities are about improving health and well-being of the community, being stewards of the environment. We work all over the country in park systems and recreational systems, and we don't see this level of commitment to natural resource very often. It's really exciting to us. And clearly sustainability, making sure we're leveraging resources and using resources wisely. As we've gathered feedback, we've really come to see these 3 themes, and these will be the way we can structure activities following the presentation and the way we're going to structure some of our initial observations about the system itself. Grow is really about how you've come to be the community that you are, what's your history, and how are you moving forward, what are the trends we see, and how you're going to change. Preserve is really about those resources and how we think about preservation of critical resources. And lastly, play is really about parks, recreation, programming, and system accessibility. So how are you doing in these 3 areas? This is the framework we'll talk about moving forward. So as you can see, this is our overall schedule. We had a discovery and analysis phase, which included one major round of public outreach, which was at Green Fest, which was really well attended and really fun. I think we gave up frisbees and right? And t-shirts and people came and we got all kinds of feedback. We'll show you the summary of that. This is the second public meeting. We're into visioning and priorities. Leaping now from what exists into what could be in the future, and you'll see that in the conversation. And we'll take all of this and synthesize it into a sort of draft plan, and we'll review that with you all in September. So this is the last chance to give feedback. You'll actually get to see some of the draft recommendations and help us understand if they're aligning with what you expect. We'll be done with the draft plan by the end of the year, and then we'll go to the state process, as John said, and hopefully that gets accepted and we are successful in moving forward in securing resources. So what have we heard so far? At Greenfest public events, when we asked people what they thought of the system, 33% said the system is great as it is. That's lovely. 22% said there should be more program choices. So that's something we'll be asking you about tonight. What are the things besides pickleball and plus pickleball, ladies, that you need to see here? And 19% said more access to trails and open spaces. This is a national trend around trails. And hey, look, participants want to see more pickleball and bocce. So we're hearing it. We hear it loud and clear. But what we love, again, as people that work all over the country, is these were some of the words that we could pull out of that feedback. And clearly, this is a very high-performing system, and people are generally very happy and find it really exciting. I mean, awesome was the biggest word that we used. So it's a pretty great foundation to start from. We also did a statistically valid survey. That's where we're actually looking to get a cross-section that really represents the community. That's why it's called statistically valid. That means we needed to get about 800 surveys to have a high level of confidence that it's reflective of the broader community. And this also is very thrilling, that the number of people that were very satisfied or somewhat satisfied is very high. And this is really high compared to other communities across the country. Some dissatisfaction, and that's sort of something we can focus on, is kind of how do we address those needs that aren't being met. People said they would drive or travel about 20 minutes to get to a resource that they're interested in visiting. And again, really exciting, 58% of residents said they would support acquiring land, and 76% for active uses, and 76% said they would acquire for conservation. So again, a lot of desire to improve the system, which is a great system. Some other kind of key takeaways. Satisfaction among those people that use the park and recreational system or recreation park system weekly is about 90%. Again, very, very high level of satisfaction, and that's for about 4 in 10 residents are using one of the resources at least weekly. Like everyone, lack of time is the greatest limiting factor in use of the system. Lives are becoming increasingly more busy. It's hard to get kids out into the system. We know that. Maybe we'll hear more about that tonight. 50 to 20% would like a park or trail or resource closer to where they live. That's when we'll be talking about accessibility and connectivity. Trails, playgrounds, sports fields, and outdoor courts are some of the favorite amenities in the system. And lastly, I think there's a real interest in understanding, are we really meeting the needs of different races, different ages, really wanting to make sure the system and its resources are accessible to everyone. So, as we start to move towards the vision for this future park system, how do we start to think about it? So we're going to share a little bit of our existing analysis through these 3 categories. Rhiannon's going to help me out, but I'm going to start with GROW. So GROW, as I mentioned, is really about how our recreation and park system has come to be, and how can we respond to its growth and change over time, to the community's growth and change over time. Okay, pop quiz. And I've got prizes in my pocket, and they're really excited. So the first person to answer this, how many acres does recreation parks own?
C.
C? Who else? Anyone else?
D.
D.
Who said B? Who said B? There you go, yay! What's your name? Judy. Judy, congratulations. Here's your hand sanitizer. Nicely done. Rick, you're gonna get some better prizes for that. Rhiannon will cover this in a little bit later, but the department owns a lot of land. Over 5,600 acres are programmed with recreational facilities. The remainder is really more passive resource allocation. So congratulations to you for doing that. So some of what we know, the gentleman talked a lot about history. We know this is a really special place and that it's developed in a special way from its early stages of agricultural and industrial heritage, its early formations where it's a farming community. The McCarthyan, I'm a landscape architect, so the McCarthyan plan is infamous, the regional plan for Baltimore, which really established a framework of ecological resource and preservation, was really the foundation of this community. The planning that came to be with Columbia and Rouse, and the kind of idea of a different kind of development, one that was really interwoven with parks and open space and trail systems, really unique in the nation and still present today. Today we see, as we've sort of shown you already, the satisfaction, a really high quality of life. But what does it mean looking forward? Clearly we see change on the horizon. I don't know how much of you experience that. We talk about that in the grow section in the workshops, but we see shifting demographics and we see a lot of growth and pressure here as it has become a really prosperous, great place to live. And so the park system and recreation system has to meet that. It's a hard chart for me to read sometimes, so I'll explain it briefly. The blue line represents your ages from 0 to 85 and the number of people within that range. So you see a kind of level till about age 50 and then a drop in the older population today. But as you think about the future, which is shown in this dashed black line, you can see that you're growing older as a community, and that very much reflects the kind of great size of the boomer generation as it's aging. And so in 35 years, your population is going to look, or sorry, 25 years, your population is going to look very different and a lot older. So how can the park system really, the recreation system, address that? We see also within that different types of family arrangements, different types of needs, things are changing. Diversity, we see diversity, non-white population growing at a very significant rate. So are we really meeting needs of new members of the community, and how can we think differently about it? As grow, and now introduce my colleague Maria to talk about preserve and play. Want me to get you some prizes?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go find some prizes.
A lot of prizes. Hello everyone, my name is Rhiannon Sinclair. I'm actually a native Marylander, so hopefully I can, on some level, be able to react to things the same way that you do. My clicker is gathering prizes, so I'm just going to stall for 2 seconds and talk about preserve. So for preserve, it's really thinking about how we conserve natural resources and also agricultural lands. What does that mean for sustainability? What does that mean for future generations? So again, pop quiz, and Gina has prizes, I think. The largest county-owned open space is the Middle Tuxton area.
Oh, right here.
Wow.
So fast.
Everybody knows the answer.
I sold you some land for that, so I know.
So here, look, you already have a pen and crayons, but here, share with your friends. There, color away.
So the Middle Tuxton area is very large. It's just over 1,000 acres. It's a huge system filled with trails and kind of programmed spaces that aren't necessarily what you would think of when you think of a traditional recreational area. So most of the focus of this plan in terms of preservation are around ecosystem services. And I've always wondered what ecosystem services are. It's kind of a hard concept to grasp. It's essentially all of the things that nature does that make us able to live in a high quality environment. So, you know, the amount of carbon that a tree takes in or sequesters so that we can breathe clean air every day. You know, water quality, think about oysters, how oysters are able to filter that water and enable us to have fresh, clean water, and other animals to have fresh, clean water. And so we started with the regional scale. We started with the Chesapeake Bay Watershed. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with this. It's kind of funny to see the map in this way, to not think of the states, but to think about the watershed as driving this. But here's Howard County, this little circle there. The Chesapeake Bay Watershed is the largest watershed in the Atlantic seaboard. It's the third largest in the world, so there's so much effort that needs to go into protecting that, right? And then if you zoom into Howard County, there are 4 smaller watersheds that exist within it. There's the Patuxent River, the Middle Patuxent, the Little Patuxent, and the Patapsco River. And all of those drain into the Chesapeake. So it's extremely important that we become stewards of our environment and really think about water quality, what types of things are going into our stormwater systems, and how we think about those for the future. We also looked at biodiversity. So here are some scale comparisons of some of your largest natural resource areas. The Middle Patuxent Environmental Area, David Forks, and Gorham Stream Valley Park. A lot of work is already being done by the county to really consider invasive species, to try to make habitats for species that are endangered, and then to really think about what that means for the larger kind of system. And then we overlaid some of the work that the state is doing in terms of creating those habitat corridors that vegetation and that animals need to be able to get from place to place and to really survive in the climate that we're in right now. And so here are some examples of some more social connectivity programs that are that the county is undertaking to enable us to really work with nature and to think more about the lands that need to be preserved. So the Robinson Nature Center, I think, is a great example of that. There's also opportunities for students to plant trees to increase our tree canopy across the county, and then other community engagement projects and trail projects around the county. And so, again, as I said before, land conservation is a very large part of this plan. So really thinking about forest conservation, agricultural easements, which are not something that the county owns, but the county is responsible for being a steward of those spaces and making sure that we preserve such a historic and valuable piece of our land. And then also not to disregard history. History is such a huge part of the county. So remembering that the county does own so many historic sites, and that many of the historic sites might want to be a little bit better programmed, to think about how we can allocate resources to help leverage these programs or leverage these sites, so that we can build tourism around the historic sites and build preservation around the historic sites, because we're not going to be able to rebuild them, right? So what we did, and you'll see that these at each of the boards when you go over to them, we've identified a series of trends and opportunities based on 4 themes. And so I want you to visit these posters and identify both what you think they're doing well, what you think they could build off of, things that you think are interesting. We've identified a few precedents. It would be great for you to identify things that you're like, oh, I really like this, or no, this is a bad idea, let's not do this. All right, now moving on to play. So this is a pretty meaty portion, but once we're done with this, we can move on to the brainstorming session and get your feedback. So for play, it's thinking about today's needs and then planning for the future. So thinking about the future more innovatively and considering the aging population and the general plan that was developed more recently. All right, so this is going to be another pop quiz, so be ready with your buzzers. Visits to parks are down, so are visits to the backyard. Only 10% of American teens spend time outside doing it. This is from a RAND study. They recently looked nationally at all park systems and were able to find a lot of really interesting and kind of surprising statistics. What did the recent study find was the best way to increase park use?
Pokemon Go.
Yeah. Numbers have changed. That's last week.
What? Marketing? Yep.
Where is it?
Marketing.
Sir, do you like potato chips? Absolutely. I don't care, now they'll stay nice and fresh. Nice work.
Speaking of marketing.
All right, so yeah, marketing, getting the word out. Effective marketing can increase park use by about 62%. That's the largest across any of the other methods. Programming increases it by about 68%, and amenities do it by 2%. That's not to say that amenities don't do anything. They are still an important part of the park system, but it's important that we do still leverage marketing as a piece. So how does Howard County maintain excellence and compare to its peers? A major part of the analysis that we're doing is evaluating the park against itself. So doing a parks inventory. A few months ago, 4 of us went out and we went to every single park and facility and looked under every rock and did every little piece just to make sure that we understood the quality and the quantity of parks that you have here. We also look at NRPA's peer benchmarking system. So that's the National Recreation and Parks Association. They have this great database called Courageous that's online, and anyone can access it. And you can see both Howard County's park system and how it works against other park systems. So we evaluated Howard County against other systems that have over 250,000 residents.
Oh, sorry.
And then we also developed a park proximity model. So these last 2 are mainly based around state requirements, but we also do them in other park master plans as well. So a proximity model is essentially saying, here's the pinpointing the park, or pinpointing a playground, or pinpointing a recreation center, and saying, okay, who can access it within a 5-minute walk of their home, and then who can access it within 10 minutes drive of their home, and really identify where there might be gaps in the county. And then the last one is the park equity model. So overlaying the proximity model over top of demographic information, looking at income, the number of children in a household, minority populations, and then also that park proximity model that I talked about before. So we classify parks in this way. It's a relatively loose classification, but it helps to understand better what's being served and what types of amenities need to exist in certain areas. So a neighborhood park are the types of parks that you have near home. It's smaller and has a playground. It might have a few benches or picnic tables. A community park tends to want to be within a mile. It's a little bit larger, and it usually might have a few recreation fields or like a mixture of different uses. And then a recreational park is within 5 miles, so that's kind of like Centennial Park is a regional park. And then the last is natural resource areas. So those don't really fit into any of the categories because they have a very different use. But we also look at those as well. And then based on that park classification, we've identified the amount of parks, or the amount of acreage that you have within each one. So regional is kind of not surprising. You have a lot of acreage within that. You have a lot of playing fields and courts. Community parks and neighborhood parks, again, that's kind of what you see across the board. And then you have a significant amount of natural resource areas. As Gina had mentioned before, you have 5,600 programmable acres, but you also have a significant amount of other acreage that doesn't necessarily fit within those categories. So those are places like properties that they own that they lease out to farmers for agricultural use, or specific conservation spaces that they want to keep but they don't want the public to access. And then just a kind of really quick point to mention, similar park systems have about 2,300. So you have a lot of park space. So during our inventory, we took pictures of all the different places we looked at, and here are a few examples of the neighborhood parks that exist. And then community parks, taking a few pictures of kids playing at the basketball courts. Regional parks, and then natural resource areas. We had to get the wasp nets in there. That's very important. And then, so we took that parks inventory, we identified qualitatively and quantitatively what each of them had and did not have. And then we evaluated them against each other. So neighborhood parks had an A-, community had an A-, and then the regional parks had an A. The lowest ranking was natural resource area, which again is not surprising because it's a much larger area and the uses are a little bit different. But we found that there was a little bit more mountain biking and jogging. How do we continue to incorporate those within the park system? So going back to that accessibility piece, the proximity analysis that I talked about before, this is identifying what we call isochrones. So instead of doing a radius, which is kind of false, right? Like you would never drive straight out. You drive along the road. So taking exactly where the parks are in yellow and then driving out along those roads where there might be gaps. So it looks like there are gaps in the western portion of the county, but as we know, I think that it's a very different type of feel there. It's a little bit more rural. There are a lot bigger houses, a lot bigger yards. So it's worth looking into this and overlaying that demographic information on top to make sure that the populations that are being served are the right populations. And then again, when you go over to the boards, it's important for you to identify the different themes that we've shown here. Maybe add a theme or add a precedent that we didn't include, and just talk about things that are working or not working. I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Okay. So, yeah, this is just a couple slides about vision, kind of where we could see this going, but again, we're just speculating based on our preliminary research. This is a map of Howard County, and you see the planning zones, the water bodies, and highways. You can start to think that there's a lot of divisions, and what we really think a vision should start to do is knit together Howard County into what we call 1 Howard. Next slide. Yeah. So as we think about integration and a holistic vision that really brings together the whole community and the whole system, there are 3 themes, and these are loosely based off of the NRPA's kind of major pillars. First, conservation. How do we bring nature into the more developed areas of the community? So a lot of times we look at Howard, we think the rural west and the more developed east, and how can we start to think about both having a strong presence of nature? Second, health and wellness. How do parks and recreation services connect to human health? I think there are, and you'll see on some of the boards, there are some health issues here, as there are everywhere, and so the parks and recreation systems are clearly a way of helping people stay active and fit, so thinking about that. And then lastly, social equity. how do we respond to growing diversity throughout the system and improve access and social spaces countywide. So we know you're changing, and we want to make sure that this plan is really addressing those needs. So that we have, at the end of the day, one Howard County. And it's a holistic, again, a whole vision about what the system can be in the future. And with that, Chance is going to lead us into workshopping.